here's where I ran into a problem. I'll say that. So when I went to my Uncle Steve, and he first kind of told me about the 80-20 type rule, what I was doing, and again, like I tell you guys, is that I taught, public schools, and so I was with all women, basically, because I was in the primary grades, K through third grade, almost all women all around me. And women love to talk. Amen to that, right? Women love to talk. So when I started, asking my, Uncle Steve for, hey, how do I become a better conversationalist, all that stuff, and he's giving me the tips about getting other people to talk. Well, I was doing that for a while, and then I came back to my Uncle Steve and I said, all right, Steve, it's working really well. I'm getting people to talk. I'm like, they want to come to me for conversations, all that stuff. And then I was like, well, but now I got a problem. What do you do when you let someone talk and they talk about stuff that completely bores you? Because that's not fun for anyone. I wouldn't tell anyone to just sit there and just listen to someone and just, sacrifice yourself for that. And this is where it really came together for me, and it made it, again, way more fun. And this is why, this is how you can control conversations without talking. And so you always want to be genuinely curious. When you're genuinely curious about someone, then they're going to really love talking to you. Like, think about that right now, guys. If you have a hobby that you love, and somebody asks you, and they're super curious, and they're just like want to know what it is about that hobby that you light up about, and they're very curious, they're very genuinely interested in it. There is basically nothing better on this earth than when somebody is genuinely interested in listening to you as you talk. It just feels really good. It feels really good. I think we all can kind of agree to that. So here was kind of the next layer of when you get other people to talk, 80-20 and all that stuff, is that you are still steering the conversation into topics that you're interested in, but you're letting them be the star of the show. And I'm going to try to see if I can give you, I'm going to give you an example of what my uncle always would do that I just can remember, is sort of how he can control conversations when letting other people talk. Is I remember he would always, whenever we come in, like me and my two older brothers, and we, if we hadn't seen him for a month or two, he would come in with something like, hey, tell me 3 things that you're most interested in with your job right now. Tell me 3 things that are the most exciting to you about your job right now. So he can give a topic. He can give a category. But again, right, he's letting the other person talk because he knew that he wanted to talk about work. He kind of knew what we all did. So he steered the conversation how he wanted to, but then he would let us talk about what we wanted to. Now, if we ever got sidetracked, I just remember him doing this all the time. And it's so funny. Until I knew what he was doing, I never really realized what was going on. And like now, when I go back and I watch him, it's like I can just see him. He's just an expert in action. But I can see what he does. If someone gets off track, someone starts talking about something that he has no interest in, he has no problem just kind of like, no, stop. I wanted 3 things about your job that you're interested in. I don't want to hear about what you did last week. He'll say stuff like that. So he's still in control, but and it's like in a very natural way. So he figures out what he's interested in, and then he gets the other person to talk, and then he leads the conversation where he wants it to go. So he is able to maintain his own curiosity because, if he gets bored, the conversation is going to be boring. But when he's genuinely interested, the conversation's always interesting. So that's another tip, is that you control where it goes, but you let them be the star of the show. I'm going to pull up something from the book, and we'll see if this helps a little bit. Okay. Again, this is from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Okay, so if you want to make enemies, excel your friends. But if you want friends, let your friends excel you. And I'm going to break this down a little bit. So why is this true? Because when our friends excel us, they feel important. But when we excel them, they, or at least some of them, will feel inferior and envious. And then this is a little story of, so by far the best liked placement counselor in the Midtown Personnel Agency in New York City was Henrietta G. It hadn't always been that way. During the first few months of her association with the agency, Henrietta didn't have a single friend among her colleagues. Why? Because every day she would brag about the placements she had made, the new accounts she had opened, and anything else she had accomplished. I was good at my work and proud of it, Henrietta told one of our classes. But instead of my colleagues sharing my triumphs, they seemed to resent them. I wanted to be liked by these people. I really wanted them to be my friends. After listening to some of the suggestions made in this course, I started to talk about myself less and listen more to my associates. They always had things to boast about and were more excited about telling me about their accomplishments than about listening to my boasting. Now, when we have some time to chat, I ask them to share their joys with me, and I only mention my achievements when they ask. And this is Principle 6 from the book, Let the Other Person Do a Great Deal of the Talking. A lot of people would say, what is a good conversation? And someone would say, both people do 50% of the talking. Well, that might be true, but if you want to be a good conversationalist, then you do 20% and let that other person do 80%. A good conversation would be if my uncle and I got together now after knowing all this stuff that he's taught me. It's really fun because we play this own little game with each other. We have this own mental clock going on in our own head about like, okay, I talked a little bit, I talked too much, his turn, boom. And we try to put it on the other person as much as possible. So when two people really understand this, then you actually get more of a legit 50-50 because you're just passing it back and forth to each other basically as much as you can. But in general, with 95% of the people you will meet in this world, a good conversation, think of that is that a good conversation is when you do 20%, they do 80%. Only the very advanced conversationalists will know this kind of game where it's best to be interested in other people. Let them talk. Don't hog the mic. Get it back on them as much as possible. I just talked to a guy yesterday, a little coaching about a date he was on. And he's a good conversationalist. I know this because I talked to him. He's good at talking. He's good at BSing. He has nice charisma. So in his mind, he didn't need to work on anything with conversations because he's like, no, I got that down. I'm fine. No problem. In person, I'm good. So what he would find is like a girl would ask him about himself and he'd be like, yeah, cool. He can talk about himself. He has these interesting stories, all that stuff. Again, he's good at talking, but the difference is being a good conversationalist is even if you are good at talking, even if you have the gift of gab, is to ignore that and try to get it back on the other person. I'm going to speak to this in a dating sense, even though this could be in general, just because, I just have an idea in my mind of what I can say for this. But if a girl were to ask me, hey, do you have any siblings? And I could just be like, yeah, I got two older brothers. And instead of me going on and on about my older brothers, I'm going to go back on her and be like, yeah, what about you? Do you have siblings? And then she might tell me about it. And then when she tells me about it, I'm not going to come back and I'm going to try to play ping pong, put it on her side, and then I'm going to get more details out of her. So if she talks about, yeah, I have two siblings too, and I'll be like, all right, so tell me, what's that like? What's it like growing up, as a girl with two older sisters? I only have two older brothers, so what's that like? And I try to then put it back on her. And throughout the entire date, right, I am not, even when she asks me a question, I am answering as short as possible. And then I'm trying to link that. I'm trying to make that, I'm trying to then use that to bridge and get her talking again about something in her life. Because again, everybody likes to talk about themselves. I know if I meet a random person, they really don't care what I do. They really don't. But I know that if I meet a random person, they're going to feel really good in that few moments if I let them talk about themselves. Because again, everybody likes talking about themselves. So it's like putting your own foot in your mouth and realizing even when you want to come back with something, even when you agree with something, you want to be like, hey, I agree. I feel the same way. Here's my story. It's like, just train yourself to, they talk about something, you agree with it, cool, but try to get them to now go deeper. Try to get them to branch off of that. Try to find something that really lights them up, that really they're passionate about, and that's when you hit the jackpot and you can just let them talk about all these different things. And guys, I know that this sounds kind of like, yeah, it kind of sounds obvious, get the other person to talk, but I promise you, if you do this with any random person, you will find how easy it is when you train yourself to do this, that you can get other people to talk 90-95% of the time, and it's almost like they won't even notice they're doing it. They'll just keep talking, they'll have the best time, but they will leave that conversation going, wow, whoa, wow, MAGA man is a great conversation. Like they'll leave going, wow, Gerara is a great conversation. He's very interesting. Even if you didn't say much, they think you're very interesting because you're interested in them and you're letting them talk. And then they think you're just some very interesting person. And it's really fun too, because then you get to know people around you far better than you ever did before. Let me see. Oh yeah, I gotta put this one up. And I'm gonna tell you guys a story in a moment here about Super chat from Divining Rod. Divining Rod, what's up, Divining Rod? I love your little avatar. The little kid. By the way, actually, I'm house sitting for a cat right now, so I left my door open here because the cat's probably gonna come up. Well, maybe jump up in my lap here soon. I'll introduce you guys to her. I love animals. Perfect topic needed tonight. Tip jar. Thank you, man. Thank you. Conversation skills are it's so fun because you just have when you train yourself in this, going to new events, meeting new people, everything is more fun, even with family members, because again, like I promise you guys, 95% of the people won't know what's happening. You might even feel like, oh, they're gonna know that I'm just letting them talk the whole time. They won't. They'll just get caught in talking. And by the end of the night, then they'll be like, whoa, I feel like I talked all night. I don't even know anything about them. Man, and then they're going to want to make it up to you, and they're going to want to be around you more because you're a great conversationalist. I want to tell you guys a little story, actually, about this. I did a video on this. It might be in the membership. I don't think I put it on YouTube. But it's still just such a good kind of... relates to what we're talking about here. Was a couple years ago, I had this girl that I was, kind of hooking up with, just totally casual. And she had this Christmas party that she was able to bring someone to. It was going to be a really nice restaurant because she worked at a chiropractic office. She was like an assistant. And she told me, she's like, Adam, I know we're not. She's like, don't worry, I know we're not, nothing serious. But she's like, would you go to me with this event? Because she's like, I honestly, there's going to be a lot of people that are intimidated because around her are all doctors, chiropractors, these high status men, these guys that had, and she's like, there's a lot of people that be intimidated and really boring. And she's like, I just know that you'll be able to hold conversations. Would you want to be my date for that? And so I was like, sure, that sounds kind of fun. It was a nice restaurant. Again, guys, I've been a school teacher. And then just recently started this business. Guys, I've never had money. So when someone's like, this nice restaurant, I was like, oh, sweet. I'll pay for all that stuff. Like, that's a cool new experience for me. So I went with this girl, and I was around 4 or 5, high status men, made tons of money, doctors. They'd have their wives there or whatever. And what I did when I went in this environment, right, I knew nothing about chiropractic work or any of that stuff, but the lead doctor I happened to be sitting next to at dinner. And again, does he care at all what some random date of his assistant does or anything about that? Just to be honest, he has no care in the world what I do, any of that stuff. So it's fine. I understand that about people. So what I did was I just was super curious, and I was just kind of like I would just kind of ask him little things. I was kind of like, okay, so chiropractic, like I kind of get what a chiropractor does, but how does somebody how does somebody get into doing that? Like, how do you just kind of go, hey, I'm going to be a chiropractor? Like, how does that, it's not like you wake up one day and you want to be a chiropractor. So I ask, and I'm interested, right? I actually want to know. Because, right, guys, how does a chiropractor get into it? I know some people that's like, oh, well, their dad did it and their dad did it, and you kind of pass down the family. But how does a random person get into chiropractic? And again, I might have asked a couple questions before this, but I remember that lit him up. I could just see this twinkle in his eye. It's like he had never been asked that before. This guy that had done this for 20-something years, it's like people don't ask him the questions like that where he gets to talk about himself in that way. A lot of times I'll ask him professional questions and all that stuff. And so he told me, he's like, well, actually, it's a really cool story. When I was a young kid, he played football. He hurt his spine really bad to the point where he'd have really hard time moving. His life seemed miserable for a period of time because he had all this back pain, all this other stuff. And he went to a chiropractor, and the things they did, he said it was like magic. He said he didn't ever think that he would be relieved of the pain that he had until he went to a chiropractor. And right when that happened, he goes, this is what I want to do. I want to do this for other people. And it's like the way that he started to light up about that, then I was able to ask him other questions about okay, so, tell me some things. And I was able to just kind of go on and let him talk about himself the whole time. But this is this super high status man. He doesn't, no money to him means anything anymore. He's used to the nicest stuff. He's used to all this money. But what he enjoyed, and I tell you what, everything about his body language and stuff changed to me throughout, after this conversation, is he was like a kid in a candy shop because no one took the time to ask him these questions about himself and let him actually talk about himself, as opposed to asking him questions about how do you do this procedure? How do you do that procedure? Just little things like that. And from there on out, we went to dinner with a couple of these doctors or whatever. It was me and this assistant stuff. And then we were going to go home after. And he stopped us. He stopped my date. And he's like, hey, you and your date, come on to us to the after party. All drinks are on us. Just come on out. Let's just have some fun. So then he took us to a couple bars after bar hopping. He had the whole, he picked up the whole tab, and we had such a fun night. And this guy went from professional to buddy, and it was just a different vibe. Way fun, all because I just simply was curious. Just simply curious. Other than that, there's no reason that he would have someone like me, just a random guy, just another person. No reason. But when you get curious about people, they love you for it. They think you're super interesting because you took the time to be interested in them. Don't forget, subscribe, like, comment, share the video, but definitely subscribe.